Welcome back to another Growing in Grace podcast. I mean, God bless you. Welcome to another Growing in Grace podcast. We're glad that you're with us today. We are glad that we have a special guest with us, Sister Donna Green, and she's come to share some of her life experience and testimony with us about dealing with childhood trauma as an adult. Dealing with childhood trauma as an adult. And we know that there are some people who have had a traumatic experience in their past, and they've carried that traumatic experience from their past into their present. And the way that they're holding on to it is going into the future as well. And there are people who need to deal with those traumatic experiences in such a way to where they can release them so they can go forward and be free. And so today, we want to prepare for this conversation. But before we get into the conversation, I do want our audience to know that we're glad that you're with us. We do want you to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast and let other people know that the benefit that this podcast is being to you. If you have topics that you would like for us to discuss or to hear us discuss, you can email me at ltgigpodcast@gmail.com. That's ltgigpodcast@gmail.com. Again, we're glad that you're with us, and let's get into the conversation. Glad to have you, Sister Green, with us today, and let's begin to talk about our subject for today, which we can talk about a lot of things.
Definitely.
Well, let's talk about dealing with childhood trauma as an adult. It happened when you were a child, but it's carried over into adulthood. And, how has that come to pass, and what does that look like? So you can start with, the childhood trauma that you've dealt with or have had to deal with in your adulthood life. So you can just give us some background.
When I was young, the things that I've dealt with when I was young, I didn't know I was going through the childhood trauma until I became an adult. When I became an adult and I started doing some things and acting out in certain ways and doing certain things, I had to go back to figure out, where did that come from? Why am I saying this? Why am I cussing people out? Why am I doing all these things? Why did that little bitty thing trigger me so much that I wanted to lay my hands on you and fought and doing all these things? Even as I was in church, some of those things still triggered, So I had to kind of go back and figure out, okay, well, where is this coming from? Because I know that if I'm walking this way now, then those things should be behind. But then I realized that those things had never been dealt with. So since they hadn't been dealt with, they keep coming up because the scar, even though it's closed, on the inside is still open and it's still bleeding and it still needs some nurturing in order to close. But I had to figure that out. And so a lot of things in my adult life that was negative, a lot of that came from my thought process that stemmed from my childhood trauma.
I see. So childhood trauma, where did you grow up at?
Well, I grew up here in Atlanta in Carver Homes.
Carver Homes.
And that's where a lot of my stuff started at. Living in the house with my siblings, fighting all the time, and mom working all the time gives you an opportunity to do a lot of things that you shouldn't be doing. Getting cussed out a lot and talked to and called all out your name and all that stuff there. It tends to shift, for lack of a better word, your mindset to that. So I became a product of my environment. And so within that, I began to absorb some of the things that happened around me and some of the things that happened to me that I did not address nor let go. So those things kind of stuck to me as I grew, and that's how I began to raise my kids, talk to people. You know, I had a reputation for having a sly mouth and slick mouth and this, that, and the
You?
other.
What? Get out of here.
Yeah, so, but you know, I realized all of that came from the things that I went to. Let me give you a for instance, like so when I was young and my mom sent me over to my aunt's house. I think I told the story before, but it's such a relevant story in my life. When I was young, my mom sent me over to my aunt's house, and my aunt was an alcoholic. Well, the man next door killed his wife. I think he walked in and found her. And it was so traumatizing to me because the ambulance was out there, and the police helicopters and flying all around and everything, and my aunt wasn't there. House was dark, and I'm young, you know, so I'm traumatized. I'm thinking they coming after me, you know. Well, when I went home, when I heard the police, I automatically got in a shell. And my mom said, my brother, when I went to crime, just because I heard a police car, you know, the siren, and my mom said, my brother went and told my mom that I was in there crying, and my mom said, I'm not studying her. I'm not studying her. Well, that right there, before my mom got in the house, I had dried up my tears and I was back normal because she said I'm not studying her. She might have said that just to say that, but to me, she was saying my tears didn't matter. So from the time I think I was like 7 until my mom died when I was in my early 50s, I never cried to my mom again. But I stopped crying. Because what I heard was my tears didn't matter. So I stopped crying. And a lot of people that I grew up with would always say, do you ever cry? I didn't cry at funerals. I didn't cry here. I didn't cry there. Because those 3 little words, I'm not studying her, told me that my tears didn't matter. That was trauma to me. You know? So so whatever happened, I had to always be hard because I didn't feel like my emotions matter. So I didn't show emotion. I wouldn't do it, and so that was trauma to me.
So you wouldn't show emotions in front of people, but did you have them privately? You didn't even have them privately.
I didn't have much. I numbed out. See those words that my mom said to me.
But she didn't really say them to you though, did she?
I heard it.
You overheard her saying that.
I overheard her because I'm so scared of what happened over there that when I heard the siren, I'm thinking that they're gonna come get me.
Yeah.
That was my mindset.
And you were how old now?
I was 7.
Yeah.
But when my mom said that, it kind of it made me dry up everything so I never cried to my mom. Only time she saw tears was when she whooped me, you know, and I got whoopings often. But I never cried to her about anything.
I see.
You see? So that was one of the things that I had to figure out. Why is it the whole world around me is crying and I can't cry? You know what I'm saying? Or I didn't. So it was things like that. Like when my son got missing, I opened the door and let the lady in my house that stole my son. That was a decision that I made. So from then, I stopped making decisions. I allowed everybody else to make decisions for me. You know, when I was raped, it told me that I didn't matter. When I was molested, it told me that I didn't matter. So the things that went on for me, those traumas that I never addressed in my childhood, you know, when I was put out, when I slept on the street, when I had to sleep at the shelters and as a teenager, having to deal with all that. You know what I'm saying? When my mom hit me so hard it made my face swell and then put me out in the cold at night with house shoes on in February. Of those things that I had to deal with, those were just trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma that I never addressed. I didn't address it. I just began to feel like those were the things that's supposed to happen. And so just eat it up and go on.
So, well, but it just don't sound like you did just eat it up and go on. It sounds like they accumulated.
They did. They did. So as I got older it started coming out in other ways.
Yes, yes.
You know, it
Yeah.
started coming out in other ways. And people around me, they suffered because I had issues.
Yeah.
I had mental issues that I hadn't addressed.
Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't about the person that was in front of you. It was actually about some stuff that had happened in childhood.
Definitely.
And what I'm saying is you're dealing with a thing at work or with your children, that your children now or
Right.
at the time,
Right.
and it really wasn't necessarily about what had just happened. It really was more about what had happened in your childhood
Right.
than it was what was actually happening at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that trauma and pain that we look over, that we don't deal with, we don't address. And once you don't address it and deal with the emotions behind it, it doesn't go anywhere. It sometimes you can dismiss, but then you wonder, why is this coming up all of a sudden now? This been years later. That been happening. This years later. Why is it coming up all of a sudden now? You know. So those things that we don't address, they don't go
Don't
anywhere.
necessarily go away.
They don't.
And so sometimes I think we need to hear that just because you didn't address it, that didn't mean it didn't happen, and it's gone away. Just because you're not dealing with it, that doesn't mean it's resolved. And how did you begin to know that you need to begin to address these issues, and have you begun to resolve those issues, and where you know, how did you begin to know that you need to be, how did you become aware?
Well, the man that molested me was my mom. It was three of them, three different men, and they were my mom's friends and boyfriend or whatever. When I realized that I had so much hate for this man, that when I found out he was dead, I was happy that he was dead because I hated him. And for me,
So you did have an emotional response.
but this was years later, and at the time I shouldn't even have hate in my heart. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't have those things in my heart, because after he did what he did, he still came around all the time, and I still talked to him as if it was nothing, because it was, for me, in my household, I didn't matter. So I wouldn't tell mom, because I wouldn't tell my sisters, I wouldn't tell my brother, I wouldn't tell anybody. I just continued to go on. Each time it happened, I just didn't tell nobody because I felt like I didn't matter. And that's what I would show in my, because you got to realize when you're young, if you don't communicate with adults or whatever, only thing you had to go on is what you process in your mind and what you think about in your mind. That's all I went on. What I thought was real may not have been real, but it's how I felt based on how I was treated.
Right, I see.
You know, so my mom never nurtured or gave me any of that or told me any of those things, I love you, anything like that. The only thing I got was hollered at, fussed at, called out names and all that stuff. So, and I'm sure she had her reasons, whatever those were. You know what I'm saying? She had a history.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
The trauma that she was dealing with.
Right.
Yeah. And that may not even been about you.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
But see, it took me to become an adult to hear some of her story, to understand she couldn't give me what she didn't have. That didn't necessarily take away from what she did give me. You know what I'm saying? How she did make me feel, and the things that I did have to deal with in the household with her. You see what I'm saying? So, so when I realized how much I hated him and how much I was glad he was dead, I was like, why? You know, but I couldn't let it go. I didn't tell anybody then, but I couldn't let it go. Like,
within yourself, you couldn't let it go.
I
That you were so happy, and you thought that was unnatural for you to be that happy to know that if somebody was dead.
Oh yeah, I was glad he was dead. Yeah, yeah, I was glad he was dead.
But you see, you still smiling. What's wrong with you, sister?
At that time, I just couldn't but I didn't understand that. Okay. I didn't understand.
You didn't understand why you were so happy. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Because he took something away from me, and he made me feel like I didn't matter. So I had no feelings. Period. I was numb for years. I was numb. I didn't even know I was numb. I had no feelings when people died. I had no feelings when things happened. I just didn't feel. I was just numbed out because of all of the things that I had to endure growing up. I just kind of numbed out, and it worked for me. So I could show up here and show up there and show up there, and it never even mattered, this, that, and the other. When I seen other people cry and stuff, I couldn't even feel anything for them, I understood what was going on, but I couldn't feel what they was feeling. Even when I came to church, because they used to cry all the time. I even asked Bishop one time, why everybody crying and I can't cry? He said, just keep coming.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was totally emotionless. I didn't have those feelings, but that worked for me because it got me through the things that I was going through.
I even noticed that we normally have a tissue box, and nobody even put no tissue box here. Hey, y'all didn't put the tissue box here for Sister Green.
I don't
That's okay. It sounds like she. That's okay.
Right.
It sounds like we ain't gonna need it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we know. Right. That might be a breakthrough today.
That would be an interesting breakthrough.
No. All right, but you were in a place where you didn't show emotions. You weren't experiencing the emotions. You had become numb. But when this person passed, you did have a positive reaction to that. And how old were you when that happened? When you actually had that positive reaction to knowing that this person had passed. How old were you then?
Probably about 27, 28.
27, 28.
Like
Is that around the time when you started acknowledging, I need to do something different?
It wasn't until my husband died that I realized I had some issues. When he died, all of the demons that, for lack of a better word, all of the demons that I was dealing with kind of came to surface. Everything started popping in my mind to the point where I thought I was losing my mind. I actually literally thought that I was losing my mind because not only what I was dealing with the grief of Raymond, I was seeing in my thought process my son being taken. I was seeing me being molested. I was seeing me being raped. Things start creeping up to me in the middle of the night. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't sit at a red light. I couldn't, you know what I'm saying? It's just things start happening. So that's when I realized I would go to work and just fall down and go in the bathroom and just fall down the wall, just crying, sitting on the floor because I couldn't handle the pressure. It's like everything that ever happened to me, it came then. That's when it came. And then, I had to realize, okay, you finna break. But you got these kids. What you gonna do? You got to figure something out. I went to the therapist. He couldn't help me. I didn't really have anybody to talk to, so I would come to church, and that wasn't helping me either. Because my mind, I didn't hear anything that the pastor was saying. My mind was too consumed with the past and all that had happened, all those things that I put down that I didn't deal with. Now all of a sudden, when all I should be dealing with is the death of my husband, I'm dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
And so
all from the childhood and from mama and coming on up into adulthood, it's all piled up.
So now I'm ready to I want to give up. I do. And the only thing that stuck it was two things that made me just not give up. One was my kids didn't have anybody else, and two was I didn't think I was in the best shape as far as heaven or hell, so I just kind of need to hang in there.
Sound like just be straight.
It was real.
Just be straight up. You're more on the hell side. Okay. You ain't like the mom.
Okay. That was real quick. You can't give up yet.
Yeah, we got to straighten some things out. Make my call in election sure.
Exactly. So for that reason, I had to hang it, but I didn't want to.
Yeah, that's it.
I didn't want to because it was too hard.
Yeah.
And then so now all of a sudden, I got to deal with all this childhood stuff. How am I deal with that? And the kids crying, saying, "Mama, where Daddy at?" And looking at the refrigerator and there's no food, and just dealing with the fact of. So here I am compiled with the fact that my husband just died, which was the only man I've ever known and been knowing him since I was 11. He gone. Then I got all these children. I got 1-year-old twins, a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and Kristen. So I got 5 children. I'm not working. No money coming in. Nothing. So now that's compiled with all of my childhood trauma sitting right there like it was sitting on me, and I carried the weight of that. So for me, it was, I didn't know how to deal with that. But who am I going to tell? Because I didn't want nobody saying that I was going crazy because I felt that. I felt that. And then when I was on the highway, I'm like, just go on and run in front of that truck and be over with. But I couldn't do that because, again, there was some things in question.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I just couldn't. I just wasn't finna go out like that, you know.
Right.
So I had to stay. I didn't want to.
So life was pretty rough. Right. So life was pretty rough. But you didn't want to go to a worse place.
I was clear about that.
Yeah.
But then, so one day I was then 2-3 days straight, I was having anxiety attacks coming to work. One day I pulled over and I asked myself, why am I having this anxiety? Why am I having this anxiety? And I sat there in the car and it dawned on me. You keep passing Glenwood. That's where he's buried at. You keep passing this place. That's where y'all ate lunch at. So once I realized the answer to that question, I started working on myself. Why don't you feel like nobody want to hear what you got to say? Why don't you feel like... Now, a lot of things is still hard for me to do. I'm still dealing with myself daily, but I'm accepting more of myself now than I've ever been. But, when I realized that my mom did not really... She didn't understand because she was a hard woman, but she had to be hard based on where she came from. What I didn't want to do was be my mom. I didn't want to be that. Now, my kids, I wasn't a very good parent. I provided well, but I wasn't a good parent as a mom, because they got the bulk of some of my trauma.
So, but you're saying about that as the mom, as emotionally... Is that
I was
what
unavailable.
Oh, okay.
I was unavailable emotionally. Even though I was unavailable emotionally, I still saw everything. And I showed up. Even if I wasn't there, mentally, I showed up. Even when I worked 16 hours and the next morning I showed up. I always showed up because I tried to be for them what my mom never was for me. The only thing I couldn't give them was my emotions because I did not have them to give. I was looking for them myself. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to tap back into life on life terms. I wanted to tap back in and walk back into these emotions. I couldn't then because I was still dealing with my trauma. So with the kids, they helped me in a sense because I had to show up. But every time I showed up, a lot of times I was still dealing with my trauma. So a lot of their teenage life and younger, I was still in my trauma phase. I knew it. They saw some of it bleeding out, but that's just the way I had to deal with it because I didn't know no other way. When I went to counseling, they were always kind of sort of have me counseling them or go to telling me their stuff. You know what I'm saying? So that wasn't working. And I tried not to be friendly so I could get what I needed. But you know what I'm saying? It wasn't working. And then I could not shed a tear. I just couldn't. As much as those kids was doing, and I wanted to cry, I couldn't. But I know God has a way of helping you through your process. All of that way that I went through, I needed to go that way. That's the route I had to go, because what it did is it made me stronger. You know, the not crying, the having to deal with these things myself. Because when Raymond died, I wanted somebody to just come and hold my hand, just stay with me. Can somebody just stay with me and help me process this? But it was like God said, no, you deal with this by yourself. Mentally, I needed somebody there, I felt like, and I thought that God was so unfair. Why can't I have somebody just this time? Can somebody just hold my hand? I actually asked somebody would they hold my hand one time, and they wouldn't.
And they wouldn't.
They wouldn't even do it. But I realized that God knew if somebody had been there for me, I would have probably attached myself to them. And when it was time for them to go, I wouldn't want to go let them go.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. In that process where you didn't have that person, did you develop that stronger bond with God and lean more on Him, knowing that the person just wasn't there? Did you begin to develop a stronger bond and a relationship with God?
I didn't have a choice. I didn't have anybody else. And I felt like anything that happened, I'm in God's hand. I just needed to get my mind straight, because I was still dealing with people. I was still helping people through crises, even though my husband had just died. I was, even because one of the therapists was like, Donna, you don't have anything to give anybody else. You can't even stand. You keep faltering when you stand. You got to take care of you. You empty. You don't have anything else. But that's all I knew to do, was help somebody. That's all I knew to do. So even in all that, that's what I did. But at the same time, I was struggling, because that childhood stuff was prevalent everywhere I went. When I talked to people, it would just pop in my mind. When I'm driving, it would pop in my mind. You know what I'm saying? If somebody's talking to me, it was always there.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
So we how did you begin to come to a better place, and how did you begin to put that in the past? I know in Philippians it says, forgetting the things that are behind, reaching forward to the things before, and how we should press toward the mark, toward the prize of the high calling in Christ. And so reaching forward to something that's ahead versus holding on to the past. How did you begin to release those childhood things so that you can actually begin to have the present and future that you're supposed to have?
Well, I dealt with as much as I could. I took a look at my life, and I took a look at the things that happened to me, and I realized that God made me a better person because of the things that I went through. Some of the things that wasn't on me, it was those individuals and the things that they did to me. But I realized that wasn't my fault. So I didn't have to have that hard-heartedness because of that. I didn't deserve that. But I had to know I didn't deserve that. I had to know that for myself, that I didn't deserve that. That I didn't, because one of the men said, if you tell your mom, I'm going to tell your mom you asked for it. In my mind, she was going to believe that. So what did I have to hang that on? You know? So once I realized that wasn't my fault, that wasn't on me, it released me. You know, once I realized that my mom was dealing with her own demons, and what she did and said wasn't about me, it released me. So once I realized that what I had to do was forgive myself for my son being missing. That was something that was hard for me to do. Because it wasn't like she came, somebody just up and came and stole him. It was like I opened the door and let her in. And then my baby went missing. So I felt like I was responsible because it was up to me to take care of him and make sure he was good and make sure he was covered. I didn't do that. So that was a hard one for me. I had to work through that process. And I had to tell myself some things. You know what I'm saying? I had to talk to myself a lot
Yeah.
to get past that.
Yeah.
You know. So after that, then the Philippians.
Mm-hmm.
That freed me. That scripture, when I thought about it, and it was years later,
Mm-hmm.
that freed me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, leaving those things behind.
Mm-hmm.
But then you got those that can't leave them behind because it's so traumatic. Those are the ones that I deal with now.
Mm-hmm.
Some things are just so traumatic that even though you're an adult,
Mm-hmm.
you got things coming. Because sometimes you can't go back and get forgiveness. Sometimes people not going to come and tell you they sorry. Sometimes you just got to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to get no closure behind it. You're not. It happened, and that's just something that you got to deal with. But really, those are the things that you got to give to God. Now, we spiritual, we know that. But when you're dealing with a natural person that don't have that spiritual, it's a struggle to them. And that's why you see a lot of people out there on the street. That's why you see a lot of people because even when I was homeless, at that time, I was still dealing with childhood trauma. I couldn't come stay with nobody. I shouldn't have been out there in my car, sleeping out there in the cold in my car. But I couldn't come and stay with nobody. My mental wouldn't let me. I couldn't do it.
You say your mental wouldn't let you. What do you mean by that?
I couldn't be around anybody.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't be around anybody. I couldn't talk to anybody. I was homeless. And it's cold. The coldest night in January, February, I'm sleeping out there in my car in the cold. Because I can't go to nobody. Who am I go to? The kids were all gone. You know, I got put out. Kids gone. They scattered everywhere. I'm so in a mental state. It just had to be me and God. You know, I'd rather sleep in that car because there was nowhere else I could go.
There was nowhere else you could go because there was nowhere else your mind would allow you to go. That's really what you're saying.
What I'm saying was I was dealing with so much stuff mentally that I didn't want to put that on nobody. I didn't want to be in the house with nobody having to deal because I didn't know where I was going to end up. I didn't know where I was going to be. You see what I'm saying?
I see.
So for that reason there, I just had to stay out on my own and whatever God was going to do, I felt like then let him do it with me being by myself. Because I couldn't put that on anybody else or let them see that state of where I was then. When really what it was a transformation. You know, I was coming out of the old into the new. But God had to show me some things in that van at night. He took care of me, but he had to show me some things, you know, where I couldn't sleep, and he was talking to me, and he was showing me some things and things like that. So I felt like I had to be there, you know, but I understood that I couldn't take what was going on with me to nobody else because mentally I wasn't sound. Because there was no reason for me to be out there in the car sleeping in my van. But mentally I wasn't sound, and I was okay with that. I was so okay with where I was, you know, because I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't figure nothing out. So I had to just wait to God do whatever he was going to do. I had to trust that he was going to do something, because if not, I wasn't going to be here. I knew that. I knew I wasn't going to be here. But out there, he took care of me. But still, the mental, and that's why I say when people look at mental people and they talk about them and they do this, they don't understand where they're coming from. And if you never experienced that, you don't know how being in that dark hole, what that looked like for you, then you shouldn't have much to say. Because by me being homeless, I was talked about. By me being homeless, people treated me differently because they knew I was homeless. I was at the homeless shelter, and this is 7 years ago. So by me being homeless, I had to deal with a lot of stuff that the other homeless people had to deal. I wasn't above that because I belonged to the true Church of God in Christ, because I was this person. I wasn't above that. I was down at the homeless shelter. I was trying to get food. I was doing all of that stuff because mentally I just hadn't. I had detached. But I think what it was just all of that stuff that I've been dealing with, trying to take care of these kids, doing this, doing that, doing the other, not thinking, just moving, trying to make it happen. All of a sudden, when the kids got grown, I just I kind of released it,
Mm-hmm.
and I started seeing what it was doing to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I couldn't attach back up. So in my car was where I had to be.
Yeah. And so while you were alone, do you feel like some things started to amend? You was able to start releasing some things. You just by being alone with yourself and your thoughts and your emotions, the past. You feel like in that space, in that period, you was able to start releasing some of those things.
Well, the first day I woke up homeless, I was like, "What in the world?" You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
God, what is this?
Were you mad with
You
God?
know, but I ain't gonna say I was mad with God. I was mad with me. I was upset with me because there was
Mm-hmm.
no sense in that. But I knew a lot of decisions that I made was my mental. I wasn't thinking. My thoughts just weren't right. But it was a good thing in a sense because I was transitioning and I didn't even know it.
Uh-huh.
I
Mm-hmm.
was transitioning. I just didn't know it. But I learned how to trust God in such a way that I've never trusted Him before. I learned Him in a way that I've never learned Him before because it was me and Him.
Mm-hmm.
And He had to take care of me because I couldn't take care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have no adults or anybody else around to guide me.
Mm-hmm.
So it had to be just me and Him. So when I laid down at night in that van, I had to know that He was going to keep me safe. When
Mm-hmm.
I was hungry, I just had to believe that He was going to feed me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything I needed, and He guided me. When I needed the bath, He said, go to the YMCA and let them know your situation. I did exactly what He said. Went to the YMCA and she gave me a card. She said, you can come here anytime, work out or do anything. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever I was hungry. I'm like, Lord, I'm hungry. I don't know what to do. It just came to mind. Go over to Panera.
Mm-hmm.
I went over to Panera, and the lady just treated me like a queen. She didn't even know I was homeless.
Mm-hmm.
She just said, "Oh, come on, yeah, yeah, you know, hey, go get her." I sat there. They served me. I didn't have to get up, but that was God to me. Every
Mm-hmm.
time He did that, He was saying, "I got you."
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I woke up and the car was cold and I had no gas, and some said, "Go to this gas station,"
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, "Lord, I'm cold. I don't know what to do. I'm cold." And some just said, "Go to this gas station." I wasn't going to that gas station. I said, "I'm not going. I'm just gonna drive." But my car pulled in that gas station, and there was two guys out there, a black guy and a white guy. And the guy just walked around it, and I got out the car, and he was like, "Babe, what you doing out here this time of night?" It was like 3 in the morning. Eyes all red. I'm cold. I'm shaking. And he looked in my car. He said, "Baby, you need some gas?" And he just pull some money. I said, "Man, go get her some gas." And then he said, "I said, my car ain't got no heat in it. I need some water." They took care of everything I needed.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left there, it was good. My
Mm-hmm.
car was warm again.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have nowhere to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I was hungry. And I just pulled up at the Waffle House because I know it's 24 hours. I could sleep there.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody called me and was like, "What you doing?" I said, "I'm at the Waffle House. Want to go to breakfast, my treat?" Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He took care of me out there.
Mm-hmm.
But my mental was still off. But He helped me gain a sense of clarity because I wasn't clear.
Mm-hmm.
He helped me gain a sense of clarity. So the relationship that I got was worth being homeless.
Mm-hmm.
The relationship that I got and the things that He helped me through in that trauma,
Mm-hmm.
it was just the grace of God. But I had to be where I was
Mm-hmm.
in order to get that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I can walk,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and go places and do things, and I know
Mm-hmm.
that my Father is with me,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But then we have those out there because I experienced some out there that had their trauma and pain while I was out there.
Mm-hmm.
Mental being that whole thing. It's so much to that. It's so much to that. And sometimes you can't go when people try to bring their relatives and different ones home, and
Mm-hmm.
they can't do that. They can't stay home. They can't. I
Yeah.
understand all that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like the homeless thing
Mm-hmm.
versus like I understand that sometimes people think that the homeless issue is an easy issue to
not.
fix. All we need to do, sometimes you hear people say this. Well, why we got all these homeless people when we got all these empty rooms and houses and beds and hotels? And actually, it's not that easy.
It's not that simple.
Because I understand that there's been some where they've set them up, and next thing you know, they say, you know what? I want to go right back to where I was, and they won't stay in the house.
And that if you had came to me and said, I got a place for you, you don't have, I couldn't have came to you. I couldn't have came. It would have been more mental for me to come to stay with you than it was to be out there in that van by myself.
So you feel like it was easier for you to stay in that van than to stay with somebody?
It was easier for me because I was disconnected. Emotionally, I was messed up.
Yeah.
I was just messed up. And I knew I was messed up. And I knew couldn't nobody help me at that time. But what I needed to do was just love on myself some. I needed to love on myself. I needed to nurture myself. I needed not to be so hard on myself. And I had to understand, I had to tell myself, then if you can't love on you, then just try to look at you the way God see you. So I started going in the Bible, seeing what God said about me. I had nothing on my own to stand on.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because from your childhood, you was thinking that you didn't matter. And actually, that was a lie.
But who I didn't know that.
You was
then.
believing the lie.
Right,
definitely. That you don't matter.
Right.
And
so
really,
I treated myself and allowed other people to treat me
like you didn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. And I acknowledge this, and I use this in several instances because I think it's relevant, really, for life, period. You shall know the truth. And the truth shall make you free.
It'll make you free.
That's really a universal statement.
Definitely.
The truth about what? About anything.
Anything, right.
About who you are. When you know the truth about who you are, then you don't allow the devil or anybody else to define who you are when you know the truth about who you are.
Exactly.
And when you begin to know that really you're in the image of God and you're one of God's children, then you automatically know that somebody always loves you.
Right.
And what I'm saying about that is sometimes people get this in their head, which is a lie. Nobody loves me. Well, somebody loves you, even if it's just God. Even if it's just God,
exactly.
Somebody loves you.
But you have to accept that.
Yeah.
And you have to know that. And for that period of time, even when I got married, I would say I wasn't whole. I had my issues. I was looking for somebody to save me. Raymond was the same way. Because, see, he had killed his sister. He was looking for somebody to save him. So we both came in totally not whole. We both came in with our issues. We both came in with our childhood trauma. And all we did was put it on each other. We just kept putting it on each other. So neither one of us became whole. But what I did is I came to the Lord and he turned to drugs. Both of us was trying to find somewhere to belong. Because one thing about trauma, it's hard to place it when it sticks to you. It's hard to get it off you. It's hard to you move it around. But then you act out in so many other different ways. 9 times out of 10, whatever the prisoners and all these things you see on the street and all these, they got stuff going on. They just didn't know how to handle it. My husband didn't know how to handle what he was going through when he killed this little sister at 9 and he was 7. Accidentally. But he didn't get no help for that. So he didn't know how to handle that, so he just kind of moved it around. And when he couldn't handle it no more, he went to drugs. Because if nothing else, let me numb this pain. If nothing else. And that's all we trying to do. That's all we trying to do.
So what you did was you didn't need the drugs to numb you. You had gotten numb early on when you was about, you say you was about 7, when your mom said,
I'm not studying her.
Yeah.
And such simple words.
But for your mind and for where you were at the time, it had an impact on you that kind of went on for years and years. But at the end of the day, you were really doing the same thing that your husband was doing, and that was trying to be numb.
Right. I did.
And he used a substance, and you was able to suppress.
Exactly.
You was able to suppress it without a drug. You was able to suppress it within yourself. But the trauma wasn't going away. It was just waiting on.
It was compiling, actually.
Right, and it was compiling.
Yeah.
And when your husband passed away, what age were you at that point?
35.
35. So at the age of 35, that's when you began to. It just kind of.
Yeah.
It's like that proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then you was able to begin to see some things at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But then you fast forward, you still weren't whole from there. And 7 years ago, your children were out of the house. It was just you and another traumatic experience where you had to face some homelessness.
I had to face some homelessness, yeah. And that's somewhere that I never thought I would be at that age.
Yes.
I never thought I would be that. And then I had to deal with not only that, but the embarrassment of that, the shame of that, and not only that, I also had to deal with the mental that I was going through. It's like God allowed me to hold on till they all got grown. Then I could breathe, and just release whatever was going on with me. I could just release it. I didn't have to hold no more. I didn't have to be that mom and be that person and be this person for this person. And I got to the point where I didn't care. I don't care what you think about me. I don't care. Because at that point, like I had gave all that I could give. I had held up as long as I could held up. I just want to breathe. I just want to release. I don't want to have to take care of nobody else. I don't want to have to do this. If I can just sleep in my van, cheap rent. I owned the van. I ain't had to pay no rent. I didn't have to struggle. Had to pay no light bill. Didn't have to leave the light on.
So you get in the van and say, "This is mine."
Look, I put my little Netflix on my phone and laid on that floor. But I didn't have to leave the light on the front porch. And if I got home and the lights off, I know the light off on the front porch. I know the light off. The lights off in the house. I didn't have to deal with the issues that I had to deal with. Trying to keep these kids, trying to be everything that everybody needed me to be, but I neglected me. I wasn't loving on me, and nobody else I felt like was either. Everybody was just expecting this of me. Be this way, be this way, be this way. You gotta walk this way. You gotta do this. And so I fought hard to be everything that I thought people told me I had to be, just to be accepted. I had to be this way to come to church. I had to be this way. I had to be this way to be a parent. But I lost so much along the way of myself because I never really figured out what I liked, what I wanted or whatever like that. And I tell you that the first time I actually decided I'm going to be what I want to be was when I started wearing tennis shoes. Because they used to get on me about them tennis shoes at church all the time. And I was saying to myself, I'm going to wear them. That was my stubbornness of, I'm finna do what I want to do. I'm going to wear them. I don't care what they say.
Talking about tennis shoes?
Yeah. I'm going to wear them. I'm going to wear them. Because I can't be who you want me to be no more. But that's a little bit. That was just a inkling. It didn't even make no difference. There was nobody just on me. But then when I would come to church, different things. Girl, where your shoes at? Blah, 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 blah. This is what I'm going to wear. And then at first I was just wearing shoes. I put on my shoes in the car. I put on my shoes at church. And then when I got in church and people saw me with my shoes on, I took them out and put on my tennis shoes. That was my little rebellion thing for me. So simple, right? But it says something. I got to start being who I am. And then different other things I start. And then I just start beginning to embrace who I was. My quirkiness, my craziness, my dumb, all that stuff that made up me. I'm okay with it. And if nobody else is okay with it, I'm okay with them not being okay with it. Because that's who I am. But it took me years to get to that point of I can walk in a room now with the best of them and just be okay with who I am because I'm not trying to compete or be. You know what I'm saying? I am just who I am. I feel like I'm a warrior in a sense that I've been through a lot and I'm still standing. When I didn't thought for a long time, I was faltering and I was stumbling and all that, but I kept getting up. I just kept, by the grace of God, I kept getting up out the darkness, out of this, out of that. I kept getting up. Now that I can stand, I don't let nobody take that from me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? I can think for myself. I can think for myself. I can make my own decisions. I can go. Now I fly all over the world speaking and do all, and I show up just who I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't try to be nobody else. I don't try to talk like nobody else.
Mm-hmm.
I am just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it took me a while, and it took me to be in a van
Mm-hmm.
by myself
Mm-hmm.
at night, talking to God, listening to God,
Mm-hmm.
and letting Him tell me and show me some things about myself that I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it wasn't so much what everybody was doing to me, it was what I was doing to me in my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That's where all that started from.
Yeah,
My
it
thoughts.
was your own
I
thoughts
was
that
messed
was messing
up.
you up.
I was messed up.
And I'm keep going back to what your mother said. You let what she said impact you in a certain way, and you never addressed that with anybody to get your thoughts straightened out
Right.
about what she said,
Right.
what she meant.
And she probably didn't
Yeah.
even mean
Yeah.
what I thought,
Yeah.
but it became huge to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It became huge to me. But all of those things, they made me the best of me. They made me who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's something I would put out, that sometimes I know that people would like to not have any trauma in their life. I know if I could elect to not have trauma in my life, perhaps I would elect for that. You know, no trauma, no trouble, no trials. However, how do you become something without some rough periods and patches?
You're going to go through some things.
You know, how do you
going to.
become something without that? You know,
Because that's what builds your character. That's what shows you who you are. It's the things that you go through.
yeah. And I'm just thinking about it for my life. If I was to subtract all of the bad stuff out of my life, the things that happened to me that was rough and traumatic, if I was to subtract all of that, I don't know how I become who I am.
Right.
And what about yourself? What do you think about yourself? If you would just take all of the trauma away, you take all of it away, I know you wouldn't elect, say, well, yeah, put this in there, put this in there, put this in there. All these things that have come in and happened in your life, you probably wouldn't have elected all these things.
Mm-mm.
But if you were to take them all away, are you the Donna Green that you are today?
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take nothing from my journey.
Mm-hmm.
Like looking back, the rapes, the molestation, my son getting missing, my husband died, blah, 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 go on and on and on. I wouldn't take nothing from my journey right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because now I'm able to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
I see things now that I can spot things in people. I can communicate with people. I can get out there and do things that I never thought I would do.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things that I do is based on what I've been through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How I handle. So when they down there in the dirt, I can get down there with them because I understand what that mental was. And I also know that where they at right now, you can't touch them because they ain't going to hear you no way, because I couldn't hear nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Only thing I need you to do is just make sure I have what I need. Can I go take a bath?
Mm-hmm.
Can I have something to eat? Other than that, it's nothing that you can say to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hearing you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So I can spot that.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I understand when I need to be quiet. I understand all that because but I've been through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Half of the story ain't even been told.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But by the grace of God, it's nothing to do with me. Nothing at all to do with me. It's by the grace of God that I'm able to stand
Mm-hmm.
and able to talk about it and,
Mm-hmm.
and to say some things. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying?
Mm-hmm.
But that ain't got nothing to do with me. It's just God held me up.
Yes. Yeah.
He held me up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what that's about. It ain't got nothing to do with me and smartness and wisdom and none of that. That ain't got nothing to do with me. It was just God held me up.
Right.
You know, and because He held me up through some things, I'm able to help other people.
Right.
That's all.
Right. So you're in a better place.
Definitely.
Do you feel like your childhood trauma is still impacting you in a negative way, or have you turned it to a positive impact?
No, it still has its moments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It still has its moments, and when it comes up, I have to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
I have to, because the things I can't reach toward tomorrow. I want to leave all that behind. I want to. I want to be skinny too, but you know what I'm saying.
You funny.
But it is what it is. I deal with it as it comes.
Yes, ma'am.
I deal with it as it comes, and when I know when to give it to God. And sometimes it come back and sometimes it don't. But whatever comes, I just know that I have a Father that's concerned about me.
Yeah. And you matter now.
I matter.
So by you coming to the truth of that, how has that impacted your journey? Just learning the truth that what you thought when you was a girl, how you didn't matter, just knowing that you do matter and you do have a Father who loves you. How has that helped in your journey? Even though sometimes the past does, come up, or you feel something from the past. How does the truth of knowing that you are a child of God and you do matter and you are loved, how's that impacting your journey?
It freed me. It freed the weights that I held on me. You can hear the weights falling all around me. It freed me. When I really came to that conclusion, it freed me. I no longer had to act a certain way. I could just be. And be okay with just being. I no longer had to show up this way or show up that way to get the approval of you. I could just be, and I could just show up. And whether I had the approval or not, it was okay. Because I approved. My Father, long as I felt like as long as I could go through my day pleasing Him, I'm okay. And I understand too, a lot of things, sometimes you just gotta let people's stuff be their stuff. You understand what I'm saying? When people put stuff on you, sometimes that's just their stuff, and you have to learn how to sometimes you just gotta let people's stuff be their stuff, and you gotta be okay with it. So I don't eat everything that come at me. People can say some ugly things about me, and they do. They say it in my face. They say it behind my back, and then I have to tell myself, "Why you get mad? You don't say some ugly things about people too. So why you get mad? Like you just this righteous person that ain't never said that. The Bible don't lie. You reap what you sow. You know you didn't reap that, so you might as well just chill." And I learned how to just, when they say these things and stuff like that, I work on not reacting to all that. Because some of that stuff that they say can be mean and untrue. But I've spoken a lot of untruths about people. I've said a lot of things about people that I shouldn't have said. Why would I think I'm exempt for it coming up again?
Why would you think that it wouldn't come back around to you?
Why would I think that? And in knowledge and wisdom, and now you don't like it. It don't sound. And sometimes people paint pictures, and other people believe the pictures that people are painting of you. But if they don't come to me and find out who I am, and then sometimes people say things that's really ugly, but some of that is true. I got to work on that. I have to work on that. I'm working on that. But I have to hear that, and some things are hard to hear about yourself, but I have to hear that too. You see what I'm saying? So I'm in a better place, and I can accept some things now, and then I also can say, that's your stuff. They ain't got nothing to do with me. That's your stuff. You trying to put it on me, but I'm not going to pick that up. I'm going to let that be your stuff. And then other things that people say about me that's really harsh and ugly and some truth in it, and I'll be like, no, that's your stuff. You got to fix that because it's my stuff. I need to take a look at that and change some things about that. But I have to own that too. So I'm learning how to own my stuff, and I'm also learning how to let other people's stuff be their stuff. And in the process, I'm learning how to trust what God allows.
So actually, you've come to a better place, and I know sometimes we say, hey, "Are you in a better place?" That don't mean the person done went to heaven. That means that you come to a place where you've left a place of being unhealthy, and now you're in a more healthy place, a more healthy, mental healthy position to where now you're able to process things in a way that's healthy.
Now I know not to listen
balanced.
to my mind.
Yes.
Because your mind will jack you up.
Yeah, and then sometimes you want to have proper counsel in your life.
Definitely.
Have you come to a place where you can accept counsel?
Yeah. I go to I got therapists.
Yeah, okay.
All that. You know, they don't see me, they'll call me, see where I am. You know what I'm saying? I got therapists, and I'm okay with all of that.
Therapists with an S?
Yeah,
Okay,
all
it's a group of them,
Yeah. All of that. I'm okay with all of that because I understand what I have to do for me.
Yes.
So I don't care if nobody know I see therapists. It don't matter to me. I know what I have to do for me. So I'm okay with that.
Yes. And, you know, I appreciate you being candid with us and coming to this audience to share your journey and share how your childhood trauma has come into your adulthood and how you're dealing with it and how you have come to a better position in your mental health with things that happened in the past. And you actually have a support system now that's helping you with that. You've come to know the truth about who you are as a child of God and as one that is loved by God. So it makes no difference who don't love you. You got somebody that's going to be consistent in love towards you.
Definitely.
And you got your tennis shoes on.
I got them on.
And so you funny. But you're being true to the Donna Green fashion.
Exactly.
And see, but now they matching though.
For real. And they clean.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And so I really appreciate you coming. I believe that somebody will get a benefit from this conversation. And that's what it's all about.
That's what it's
really,
all about.
This conversation is really not about you and me.
Exactly.
It's really about our growing in grace audience, the benefit that we could be to somebody
Definitely.
else. And there are so many that have experienced childhood trauma, and in adulthood, they're allowing what happened as a child to disrupt their adulthood.
They are.
And if you let it continue, it's going to disrupt your future.
It will.
And you won't come to the full potential that God has for you.
That's right.
So we thank you. And I do want to thank our audience for being with us. And we want you to receive the benefit from this conversation. And there may be others that you know, maybe in your family, maybe friends, maybe coworkers, that are allowing something from their past to disrupt their present and future. It could be from their childhood, and it's messing up their adulthood. We would like for you to share this podcast with them. Perhaps this conversation can be a benefit and a blessing to others. We would like for you to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. If you have a conversation that you would like to hear discussed on this podcast, please email us at ltgigpodcast@gmail.com. ltgigpodcast@gmail.com. May God bless you. May heaven smile upon you. Until next podcast, come on back.